The Dead Space series last made its way to the homes of eager gamers around the world with the release of Dead Space 3 in 2013. And since then, fans of the survivor horror action video game series have been itching for the next big installment. It may have taken a decade, but Motive Studio and Electronic Arts have now developed and published the latest version of the Dead Space series. This game is a remake of the 2008 original and aptly titled Dead Space Remake.
What have you got, Isaac?
Half the Ishimura's in the red. Engines, hull, the trams.
Can you handle it alone?
Fix the centrifuge. Get the fuel running.
This is Senior Medical Officer Nicole Brennan. Medical is overwhelmed. We need help.
Dead Space Remake was released on January 27, 2023 to loads of positive reviews and feedback from fans, gamers, industry observers, and critics alike. Like most fans, we jumped on the bandwagon of itchy finger gamers waiting to play this video game on their preferred game console. And after barely 2 days of intense gaming, here's our unbiased review of Dead Space Remake. The release of Dead Space Remake went according to schedule, and this Motive Studio single-player, third-person shooter, survivor horror game published by Electronic Arts is now accessible to players on 8th generation game consoles like Xbox Series XS, Windows, and PlayStation 5. We tried out the game on PS5, and this review is based on that. But before we get to the gameplay itself, we'll take a brief look at the game engine, development info, storyline, and plot. And after checking out the gameplay, we'll round up our review with our verdict. So let's get to it, folks. Dead Space was developed using DICE's Frostbite engine. The Frostbite engine is a cross-platform game engine that can be used on both 7th and 8th generation video game consoles, and that includes PCs, PlayStation 3s, Xbox 360s, PlayStation 4s, Xbox Ones, Switches, PlayStation 5s, and Xbox Series XS, as well as in the cloud on Google Stadia. On July 1st, 2021, games journalist Jeff Grubb of GamesBeat reported that Motive was working on a new version of Dead Space. He theorized that the publisher gave the remake of Dead Space the go-ahead because of the commercial success of similar games like Capcom's Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes, and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order 2019. From the start, it was decided that Dead Space Remake would be made with EA's proprietary engine, Frostbite, which was also used by Motive Studio for the single-player campaign of Star Wars Battlefront 2 and for Star Wars Squadrons. Dead Space Remake assumes a similar structure and story as the original, but developers surmised that the assets, character models, and environments would not be revamped, but instead reimagined and reinvented. The audio in the previous Dead Space series was highly praised by fans and critics. So, developers of the remake decided to maintain that same sense of immersion while making any necessary improvements or tweaks. Like in Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3, Gunnar Wright reprised his role as protagonist Isaac Clarke and provided full voice acting for the character. Also returning from Dead Space 2 is Tanya Clarke, who played Nicole Brennan, Clarke's girlfriend. Other cast members of Dead Space Remake include Farron Tahir as Chalice Mercer, Bridget Callie Cannells as Kendra Daniels, and Anthony Alibi as Zach Hammond. The story takes place in the 26th century and centers around engineer Isaac Clarke and crewmen aboard the USS Kellyan, a maintenance vessel assigned to carry out an investigation on the USG Ishimura, a large planetary exploration and mining spaceship that has suddenly gone silent while hovering above planet Aegis 7. Isaac Clarke had previously expressed concerns over a distress signal from his girlfriend, Nicole Brennan, while on board the USG Ishimura. In the process of boarding and investigating the massive planetary spaceship, Isaac Clarke's crew are attacked by necromorphs, an army of mutated, reanimated human corpses. The attack on the crew of the USS Kellyan is fatal, and Clarke is forced to battle the necromorphs as he attempts to save his remaining crew members and himself from the hideous mutated creatures that were once human. The game takes a new twist when Isaac discovers why the USG Ishimura had gone silent all this while. In his desperate search for his girlfriend, Clarke would also find other survivors, including the chief science officer of USG Ishimura, Terrence Kinn, Elizabeth Cross, the horticulturalist, and Jacob Temple, her engineer boyfriend. Clarke will also come face to face with the mad scientist and game's main antagonist, Dr. Chalice Mercer. Dead Space Remake comes with loads of new and fully enhanced exciting gameplay features. While playing, we were particularly thrilled by the full voicing capabilities of the protagonist. This time around, Isaac uses his voice, whether it's to call out his teammates' names when they are in danger or to detail his strategy for repairing the centrifuge and fuel lines on the Ishimura. Hearing him participate actively in the team's mission adds a sense of cinematic realism. In the original Dead Space, Isaac could use his rocket boots to launch himself across the gaps between platforms thanks to the presence of zero-gravity areas. You can also float in any direction in the remake, adding to the sensation of being on a spacewalk. The added thruster speed gives the protagonist an advantage, especially when dodging space-lunging necromorphs. With the Ishimura's tram, Isaac can zip between locations like the cargo bay and medical with no waiting around for loading screens, giving the remake a totally integrated experience. The dramatic moments of this game are enhanced by the use of strong lighting and impressive visual effects. In the latter half of Chapter 3, Isaac turns the Ishimura's centrifuge back on. As the massive machinery begins operating, a plethora of effects are unleashed simultaneously. The machine's massive components rumble and shake with increasing intensity, sparks fly as metal grinds, and the large swinging arm casts enormous shadows against the orange auxiliary power lights. It's a visual and auditory extravaganza that makes the whole thing more immersive. Isaac must rewire the various Ishimura subsystems to accommodate the new junction boxes. In one scenario, our team of test gamers had to decide between turning off the lights and reducing the oxygen supply in order to reroute power to a refueling station. Given the ominous choice between playing in the dark and dying of asphyxiation, our team opted for the former. Once Isaac has received a higher level of clearance, he will be able to use the Ishimura's locked doors and loot containers. This encourages players to go back to previously explored areas in search of new resources and crafting components. Behind one of the locked doors is a new side quest that will help you learn more about Isaac's missing girlfriend, Nicole. What's the point of going on a treasure hunt if you have nowhere to put your newly acquired resources? Attaching new weapon upgrade items to the plasma cutter, pulse rifle, and other weapons opens up additional upgrade paths that can be purchased with power nodes. Whether or not this involves wholly new weapon mechanics or mere additional improvements to your damage level, reload speed, or ammo capacity, for example. You shouldn't let your guard down just because you are back in a comfortable environment. Players are kept on their toes by Dead Space Remake developers thanks to the Intensity Director, which can cause unexpected events like bursting pipes and sudden necromorph attacks, as well as creepy noises like creaking vents. Isaac's weapon fire is guaranteed to cause severe tissue damage, muscle breakdown, and even bone fractures. The extensive damage not only looks horrific, but also gives players useful information about how close they are to severing a limb and killing a necromorph. The overall aesthetic has been given a lot of care and attention to detail. Dripping blood stains, flickering lights, floating dust particles, and a gloomy fog above the floor all contribute to the eerie atmosphere of Dead Space Remake. The battles are just as satisfying as before, but with less jerkiness. Shooting off necromorph appendages with the plasma cutter is as easy as flicking between vertical and horizontal aim modes. Rather than just picking up a plasma cutter off the shelf, Isaac constructs his own out of composite parts at a workbench, revealing his engineering training. In a similar vein, when Isaac goes to retrieve his status module, he finds a severed limb attached to it, the victim of a nearby malfunctioning door, it seems. These snippets of narrative are sure to get you hooked, as it did our team of gamers. To this day, Isaac's slow-mo field is superior to any other method of crowd management. Our team used the stasis in a number of ways, and we can confidently say that the stasis in Dead Space Remake is just awesome. You could freeze a necromorph next to an explosive canister and then wait for other necromorphs to approach the frozen mutated human corpse before shooting the canister and blowing all the necromorphs to smithereens. It's really cool. Dead Space's planned user interface was cutting edge back in 2008 and remains so to date. The Dead Space Remake UI maintains immersion and a sense of urgency by bringing up Isaac's projected menu in real time. Even the menu's text and icons benefit from 4K's increased clarity. Since its release, Dead Space Remake has been met with positive reviews and feedback from some of the gaming industry's most critical observers. This is just as well, as we seriously doubt the fans of the series could care less about any criticism to the remake, considering how long they've had to wait for this new version. What more can we say about Dead Space Remake? This is one third-person shooter horror game genre that has left us completely satisfied with what Motive Studio developed. We have zero complaints, and being finicky, that says a lot. So we decided to give Dead Space Remake a 9 out of 10 rating. It's now hard getting our team to focus on other games to test, as they seem addicted to Dead Space Remake, and we believe you would too. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. If you want to be notified about the best in gaming news, hit that subscribe button and hit that bell as well.